Hello everybody, welcome back to the RuneScape Catalyst League daily reveals and teasers. This is day 8, and we have 6 more days of teasers after today, leading up to next Thursday, and then the league releases on the 15th of September. Yesterday we saw some more of the combat ones. 2 days ago, of course, we saw Barbarism vs Bombardment. Yesterday we saw Soulborn and Crit Happens to fill out all 4 combat styles of what's most likely going to be a linear choice between all 4. I've been thinking about these a little bit since dropping the video yesterday. One of the things I took a look at was what the 100% hit chance could mean for you, depending on which of these 4 you do pick. The only thing I can think with this that's going to make it interesting is that you're maybe going to be able to use a couple of pieces of armor from different combat styles and make use of their set effects without losing any accuracy, because of course in RS3, if you wear armor of a certain type that's not the style you're currently using, then you get quite a large accuracy hit with your weapon, which of course means lower DPS, but with 100% hit chance, that's not going to be a factor. The only 2 things I think that this could actually be interesting with is something like Trimmed Masterwork Melee or Magic Masterwork. These are quite hard sets to get. They need a lot of boss drops broken down and high smithing or crafting. But if you do wear these, as you can see, if you wear 3 pieces of Melee Trimmed Masterwork, then you do get a set effect where incoming damage is split in half and then half of it is delayed as a bleed. So big hits are less likely to kill you and you're more likely to be able to eat through them. So that's really good for bossing. Now, if you weren't using Melee, but you've done enough Barrows, Rise of the Six, and Next to get the components to make this armor set, then you could technically make 3 pieces, maybe the helm, the boots, and the gloves. Maybe you're doing ranged, because there is no ranged masterwork currently in the game. Then you could wear this 3-piece set. You could have 30% of incoming damage delayed and dealt as a bleed, and you'd still have 100% hit chance because you'd get 100% hit chance off your relic. So that's one thing you could do. Obviously the other thing being any magic tank armor, which is a lot more achievable. You could wear Ganodermic, or if you're lucky, something like Crypt Bloom. Obviously Crypt Bloom has a set effect, but even if you don't wear this and you can only get like Ganodermic from Slayer, which is only 75 crafting nowadays, and then you could wear maybe the gloves, boots, and helm from that, and you could use Animate Dead, even while using Melee or Ranged or Necromancy, and you could get that nice flat damage block from Animate Dead. And of course, as we know, we are going to have access to the City of Sentistan spells without having to do the quest once we do hit a certain tier in the relic thing. I know a lot of people are underwhelmed with the effects of the combat relics, me too as well, but yeah, that's just a thing that you could maybe do off those combat relics, given the fact you'll always have 100% hit chance regardless of your gear. Anyway, that's yesterday's news. Today's news, we've got a brand new relic, and as you can see, we have Ascension, the power of all the god books in your hands. Attacks have a 5% chance to empower you with the Stone of Jas, increasing your combat stats to 255 for 6 seconds. Now, what I was saying yesterday when we were taking a look at the 4 basic combat relics was hopefully coming up there'll be some more combat relics that don't lock you into a certain style, and it seems like this is one of them. So I'm fairly sure this will probably be a tier 7 relic, I would imagine, if they're going to put the super powerful combat ones at the end like they have done in previous old school leagues. So I think this will probably be tier 7, and it's looking really good. Your attacks give you a 5% chance to empower yourself for 6 seconds with 255 in your combat stats. So every 20 attacks, it's not going to happen all the time, you are going to be empowered for 6 seconds, which is about enough time to get off 2 or 3 abilities. So you're going to have 255 strength if you're meleeing. Obviously the accuracy doesn't matter, but it's also going to increase your defense to 255. You're going to be incredibly hard to hit whenever this does proc, and it is a 5% chance. Now that's a passive when you do take this relic, but you're also going to be given the Elder God Book item, which is going to contain the effects of every combat god book, including the Grimoire from Solak. And it also means that god book activation cooldown has been reduced from 15 seconds, which is normally in the game, to 4.8. It's going to be able to proc more. You're not going to have an invisible 15-second cooldown on this. Pretty much a 2-parter. You're going to get every god book at the same time, including the Grimoire, which gives you crit chance, which is going to be really, really nice if you do go mage, of course. I'm assuming this is going to have unlimited charge. It doesn't say, but it would be terrible if they're going to give you every god book, but it's just empty unless you get the pages. That wouldn't make sense really as a relic for a league, but this thing's going to be wild. So here are the raw combat stats of all the existing god books in the game. I don't know if this item's going to have combat stats specifically, like a raw strength bonus or prayer bonus. We can assume it's probably just going to have a basic amount like these normal god books do, and what all of these god books do is they all have individual effects, which is interesting. The question is whether you take this relic, will they be able to stack and all proc at the same time, or are you going to have an individual cooldown of 4.8 seconds between any one of these effects activating? Because whether or not that's the case is going to make all the difference about about how good this relic is. If every single one of these Godbook effects has an individual cooldown, they can all proc individually and stack with each other, this thing is going to be unbelievably powerful. I feel like they probably won't do that, and they'll probably make it just any one of these effects may proc. Because they're particularly saying here that they're reducing the cooldown between Godbook effects, I feel like it's going to be a bit of a lottery which one you get. But really, it's going to be a passive thing anyway. So Godbooks in this game, unlike the old school ones, can be upgraded after you do a quest, and then you can actually put more pages in them from clue scrolls, and then they get a active that you can toggle on or off, and it uses charges, and you recharge them with more Godbook pages. But this relic is going to give you every Godbook all at once. So basically, Godbooks in RS3 have a 1 in 15 chance with each hit to do an effect. They do an amount of damage, or they give you some kind of combat buff. The Armadillo one will create a tornado that spins around and does some damage in an area. The Bandos one will do single target damage and also reduce the target's defense. This one isn't particularly good because it doesn't stack with other defense reducing abilities, but you know, it's going to occasionally proc and do DPS. All of these are going to do damage in some way or give you damage in some way. Gothic's book, very similar, does an initial hit, then 3 tiny hits, and then finally a 3x3, but basically all the basic God books, they do damage in some way, either to a single target or maybe a little bit less but in an AoE. But then you come to the scriptures, which are God books that you get from boss drops as opposed to the horror from the Deep Quest. So you have the Amasket book that comes from Nakatra in the Sanctum of the Devourer, or whatever it's called. Now, as you can see, if you randomly get this effect, then your damage is going to be increased by 10% for 10 seconds, and it's also going to leave an AoE on the ground under your enemy. The Eladinis God book, I don't think is one that we're going to get. It does specifically say here, every combat God book, and there are, I think, 2 God books that are not related to combat, the Eladinis and the Bic book, both of which spawn spirits while you're gathering, and you can click on them and either get clue scrolls or experience. So we're not going to get the effects of those 2. You get both those effects in the Production Master relic with that Elder Gods thing if you do take that one. So basically this one's going to give you just a random proc with a 5-second cooldown of any of these God books, but of course the chance of it actually proccing is still a 1 in 15, so even though there's a small cooldown in between each, so it might not happen every 5 seconds. More effects you can get. The full book you'd normally get from Zuck gives you a 20% damage increase for 15 whole seconds, but it also increases damage you take by 10%. That'd be a nice buff if that one does go off, and you also proc this 255 in all combat stats at the same time. You're going to have just insane damage for like 2 or 3 attacks. That'll be really, really nice. The Jas book does a little bit of a debuff on the enemy. It gives them a mark for 10 seconds, and then out of the damage you do to them within that 10 seconds, it saves it and then does a 20% of that as an additional hit after the effect's over. The Wen book's a nice casual use one. It just, once again, does a 3x3 AoE beam. So this is a really nice one if you're doing Slayer and fighting multiple enemies at once. And then what's possibly the best out of all of these is the Eredor's Grimoire, because this will be active at all times. It's not a random chance thing. If you turn the book on, you get 12% chance to critically strike. Now, normally these pages are hard to come by. You have to either do high-level Slayer monsters with a low chance of dropping a page, or fight the Solak boss, but I'm assuming with this relic, you're going to have unlimited access to charges for all of these books. So the real takeaway from this is if you're going mage with crit happens, whatever this is up against, it's probably going to be hard to top it, because you're going to want those crits, because your crits are going to be 50% better. Even if you ignore all the other God books, this one's going to give you the Grimoire, which on its own is going to give you a flat 12% chance to crit, which is of course additive with all other effects. It's going to be really nice. Obviously with this you're not going to be able to wear anything else in your pocket slot, which doesn't really matter. The only other thing you'd probably want to wear sometimes is the Necromancy Grimoire, because if you do have that equipped, then you can auto bank your bones. So if you want to remotely bank a lot of bones, you're going to be kind of torn between using this and that in some scenarios. Maybe you're doing like a Dragonkin Slayer task and you want to bank those valuable bones, but then also you might also have taken Banker's Note or something, and then this is irrelevant. But yeah, this one really, really fun. I'm really excited that we are seeing some more combat power, because I think the general rule was everyone was a little bit underwhelmed by all 4 of these combat relics, but it does seem like we're going to get at least one more tier of choices of just general increased combat power, and I think this one's very interesting. Things are just going to happen in combat. You know, tornadoes are going to appear, ice pillars are going to appear, things are going to appear on the floor under you, under the enemy you're fighting, you're going to get random buffs. All these things are just going to be proccing randomly every 15 attacks with a small cooldown of just 5 seconds in between. But the main one is you're going to have this Erod Thor's Grimoire 12% crit chance at all times, which for all styles is going to be good. Honestly, you don't even have to have took mage with this. You know, you can critically strike with every style, and at a baseline, a crit gives you 50% more damage. And then you're also going to have this passive 1 in 20 chance whenever you do an attack to get 6 seconds of 255 in all of your combat stats. So this one is really fun and really interesting. Highly powerful combat relic that will work anywhere with all styles, but maybe will be slightly better if you're going for the crit-focused mage spec from yesterday. I would imagine this is probably going to be at tier 7, because there is a precedent set from prior leagues for putting really powerful combat relics right at the end. If we take a look here at Raging Echoes real quick, in this league there were 8 different tiers. There was one that boosted your special attacks, there was one that summoned a Guardian summon permanently that did a load of damage, and there was one that basically prevented you from ever dying and gave you 255 in all your combat stats whenever you did die and brought you back to life. Based on this, it's probably a good shout that we're going to get Ascension at tier 7 here in the Catalyst League, but hopefully it's going to be up against 2 equally powerful and interesting other choices, and hopefully this excites you guys a little bit more who are a little bit underwhelmed in the combat power of these basic 4 relics. Maybe these will just put you over. You know, you'll be able to do some basic bossing earlier with 100% hit chance and more damage and stuff, but then you'll be working towards something big coming up at the end. So very excited for this one, guys. Let me know what you think about this, where this will be useful. I'm sure this will be crazy, but it is worth mentioning Jagex haven't said anything yet about increasing the damage hit cap in the game for the league, because currently in RS3 you can only hit a 30,000 with any one ability, which does mean if you save an ultimate until your combat stats are 255, and maybe at the same time you've procced like the full book to give yourself 20% more damage, and you've got this crit strike chance, so you've got 12% chance of that critting, and maybe you're also using crit happens, so your crits are 50% bigger. There's a very real chance that you're gonna just only be able to hit 30k, which isn't gonna feel super good in the league. I'm hoping they get rid of the hit cap or maybe double it, especially when they have effects like this that are going to increase the potential of one single hit going crazy by stacking multiple effects from multiple relics. Don't get me wrong, it'll still be incredible. If you're hitting like near 30ks very often, that's not a bad thing, but it will be kind of lame if we are hard capped when we should be feeling like ascended gods. Anyway, let me know what you think about this one, where it's going to be useful, whether you think you're going to be shaving off minutes off your solo Solak time with this or something, or whether you're just happy that you won't have to go farm a bunch of Grimoire pages in the league just to be able to make your magic build work. But yeah, very excited for this one, and even more excited now about these last 6 days of reveals, because we're going to see things that are going to go up against this and have a similar level of combat power, but also I'm interested to see what's going to go up against things like Perfection from before and Production Master, and ultimately probably on the 11th, where everything is going to slot in the tier table so we can actually plan our builds. Anyway, as usual, see you in the comments. Thank you for tuning in, guys, and I will see you tomorrow around about the same time.